The name Baba Vanga, blind seeress of the Rupite Hills, mystic oracle of the Balkans, woman whispered to commune with the very winds of fate, echoes through the corridors of time, not as mere folklore, but as a chilling prophecy that grips the modern world with increasing urgency. Born Vanga in 1911 in what is now North Macedonia, she lost her sight at the age of 12 in a freak storm that left her buried beneath debris, an event many believe marked her initiation into the unseen realms. From that moment on, she claimed the veil between past, present, and future had been torn asunder for her, granting her visions so vivid they bled into reality. Over decades, she dispensed cryptic warnings and astonishingly accurate predictions. From the 9/11 attacks, 2 steel birds will fall upon the city of steel, to the Chernobyl disaster, a brother will weep for his brother in a land without grass, earning her a reputation that transcended borders and skepticism. Yet it is her most harrowing and persistent prophecy, the one that haunts the collective subconscious of our age, that demands our attention now more than ever. Her vision of a third world war, a cataclysm so vast and devastating it would reshape the very fabric of human civilization, plunging the globe into a darkness from which recovery would be measured not in years, but in generations. Vanga did not speak of this war as a single event, but as a slow-burning fuse ignited by human arrogance, geopolitical miscalculation, and the unchecked proliferation of weapons that mock the fragility of life itself. She foresaw a conflict that would erupt not from a single spark, but from a confluence of simmering tensions. The East against the West, the North against the South, ideologies clashing like tectonic plates until the earth itself trembled beneath the weight of human folly. She described a war that would begin not with declarations, but with silence, a chilling reference, many now believe, to cyber warfare, economic strangulation, and covert operations that erode trust between nations long before the first missile is launched. In her visions, she saw great cities drowning in fire, their skylines reduced to skeletal ruins, and rivers running red not with blood, but with the tears of mothers who have lost all their sons. She spoke of a war that will start in the year 2010+10, placing its ignition squarely in the early 2020s, a time frame that aligns disturbingly with the escalating hostilities in Eastern Europe, the South China Sea, and the Middle East, where proxy conflicts and nuclear brinkmanship have become the new normal. Vanga warned that this war would not be confined to battlefields. It would permeate every aspect of existence, turning neighbors into enemies, truth into propaganda, and peace into a forgotten dream. She predicted that the eagle will clash with the bear, a metaphor widely interpreted as the United States confronting Russia, but she also spoke of the dragon rising from the east, signaling China's pivotal and aggressive role in the global conflagration. The war, she insisted, would escalate with terrifying speed once it began in earnest, fueled by ancient grudges, resource scarcity, and the hubris of leaders who believe their arsenals make them invincible. Nuclear weapons, those ultimate instruments of human self-destruction, feature prominently in her prophecies. She described mushroom clouds blooming like poison flowers over 10 great cities, and a winter that comes in summer, when the sun hides its face in shame. This nuclear winter, as scientists now term it, would trigger a cascade of ecological and humanitarian disasters, crop failures, mass starvation, the collapse of medical infrastructure, and the emergence of diseases thought long eradicated. Vanga's vision extended beyond the immediate horror to the long, bleak aftermath. She spoke of survivors huddled in underground shelters, drinking irradiated water, their skin peeling like parchment, their children born with deformities that mark them as children of the fallout. Yet even in this abyss, she offered a sliver of hope, not in the form of divine intervention, but in the resilience of the human spirit. She prophesied that after the Great Fire, a new seed will be planted, suggesting that from the ashes of global war, of a humbler, wiser humanity might emerge, one that finally learns to live in harmony with the earth and each other. But this rebirth, she warned, would come at a cost so staggering that future generations would measure time as before the fire and after the fire. The war, according to Vanga, would last for 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days, a precise duration that has fueled endless speculation, yet its symbolic weight is undeniable. It suggests a conflict of biblical proportions, echoing the trinity of destruction, purification, and renewal. She also claimed that Europe will disappear from the map, not necessarily through physical annihilation, but through the collapse of its political and cultural identity, swallowed by chaos and migration on an unprecedented scale. In her later years, Vanga grew increasingly despondent about humanity's trajectory, lamenting that men have forgotten how to listen to the earth, to the stars, to the silence between heartbeats, and that this disconnection from the sacred would be their undoing. Her prophecies were never meant to be fatalistic decrees, but urgent warnings, calls to awaken before it is too late. She believed that the future is not written in stone, but in water, constantly shifting with every choice we make. And yet, as we stand in the shadow of her words, watching alliances fracture, arms race accelerate, and climate crises amplify existing tensions, one cannot help but feel the cold breath of her vision on our necks. The signs she described are no longer abstract. The steel birds of drone warfare darken skies from Ukraine to Gaza. The land without grass is becoming a reality in regions ravaged by drought and deforestation. The eagle and the bear engage in dangerous games of aerial and naval brinkmanship that bring us closer to accidental escalation with each passing month. Vanga's prediction of World War III is not a distant fantasy, but a mirror held up to our present reality, a reflection of the path we are currently walking with our eyes half closed, lulled into complacency by the illusion of peace in our own backyards. She saw a world where technology outpaces wisdom, where power is mistaken for strength, and where the lessons of the past are discarded like yesterday's news. Her vision of WW3 is not merely about bombs and battles. It is about the collapse of empathy, the death of diplomacy, and the triumph of fear over reason. It is a war that begins in the mind long before it erupts on the ground. A war of narratives, of dehumanization, of us versus them thinking that makes mass violence seem not only possible, but necessary. And in this, perhaps, lies the key to averting her prophecy. If the war begins in the mind, then peace must also begin there. Vanga's legacy is not one of doom, but of responsibility. The stark reminder that we are the authors of our own future, and that every act of kindness, every bridge built across divides, every voice raised for dialogue over destruction, is a stitch in the fabric of a world that might yet avoid the fire. Yet the clock ticks and the shadows lengthen. As geopolitical tensions mount, as nuclear arsenals are modernized, as misinformation poisons the well of public discourse, the specter of Vanga's Third World War looms larger than ever. Her words echo not from the grave, but from the very heart of our current crisis. Beware the year when the number of the beast is divided by 3, she once cryptically warned, a phrase some interpret as referencing 2026, a year that now feels ominously close. Whether one believes in her supernatural gifts or views her prophecies as poetic reflections of human nature, the power of her vision lies in its ability to shake us from our complacency, to force us to confront the abyss we are hurtling toward. The Third World War she foresaw is not inevitable, it is a choice. And the time to choose differently is running out. In the end, Baba Vanga's greatest prediction may not be about war at all, but about the moment humanity stands at the crossroads and finally decides whether it wishes to live or perish by its own hand. The tragedy would not be that her prophecy comes true, but that we had the power to prevent it and chose, through apathy, fear, or greed, to do nothing. As the world teeters on the edge of a new era of conflict, her blind eyes seem to see us more clearly than we see ourselves. And in that gaze lies both our condemnation and our salvation. The echoes of her warnings ripple through time, not as a sentence, but as a plea. Remember what it means to be human before there is no one left to remember. For in the silence after the bombs fall, there will be no prophets left to speak, only the wind howling through the ruins of a world that forgot how to listen. And so, we stand at the precipice, haunted by the ghost of a blind woman from a small Balkan village, whose voice, though long stilled, rings louder in our ears with every passing day of division, every escalation, every failure to choose peace. Her prophecy of World War III is not a story about the future. It is a mirror to our present, and the reflection is growing darker by the hour. Will we heed her warning, or will we become the fulfillment of her darkest vision? The answer lies not in the stars, but in our hands, in our hearts, in the choices we make today. Because tomorrow may be too late. The war Vanga saw was not born in a single moment, but in 1,000 small surrenders to hatred, to indifference, to the lie that someone else's suffering is not our own. To prevent it, we must reclaim those surrenders one by one and rebuild the world not on the foundations of fear, but on the bedrock of shared humanity. That is the true prophecy, the one she hoped we would fulfill.